All right. Today is Monday, November 7th. Happy Elections Eve. Now, if you're clicking for the first time, this happens to be an economics/stock market channel. But we're going to talk about the elections in retrospect of the stock market and the economy. Because in this elections, unlike any we've seen since 2008, the issue of the economy is front and center. And it could tilt the election one way or the other, in a big way, in a way that we have not seen in a long time. Now, when we talk about the wall of worry for the stock market, we have many items, among them Washington, D.C. and the fiscal policy. We also have what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. In addition to the collapse in European and British economies, we also have worries about China and the tit-for-tat economic war that could morph into an actual war and perhaps an invasion of Taiwan. And of course, we have the risk of the monetary policy. But in tonight's program, we're going to concentrate on the circus over at DC because this will be the number one issue tomorrow. And I'm going to break my analysis into 5 parts. Part number 1, the top issues for both parties. Number 2, what the polls say. Number 3, we're going to look at each race, the critical races, and how they're going to swing. We're going to discuss the red wave scenario. We're going to discuss the red tsunami scenario, along with the consensus scenario. And on top of that, what happens if the blue wall scenario holds up? And in part number 4, I'm going to tell you exactly why I think the Republicans are going to win tomorrow. And last but not least, part number 5, what will be the market reaction in the short run, but also in the long run, sector by sector, name by name. And without further ado, here it is, folks. Let's go on a trip to the circus in DC. Now, before we start, I'm going to say this. Number 1, I'm going to try to do this analysis in the most impartial way I can find. I'm relying on one particular poll, and this poll comes from Harvard-Harris, which took place back in October. And the reason why we're using this poll, number 1, it counts in the sentiment back when early voting was going on. Number 2, it also tilts Democrat, but the results it shows are kind of interesting because when we have a Democrat-leaning poll, or shall we say with historic bias to the Democrats, and it shows that the Democrats are winning, there's nothing to see here. Obviously, the poll has a historic bias. And the same goes with Republican-leaning polls, which show that Republicans are winning big. There is no value to extract here. But when you have a poll that is historically leaning one way or the other, but it shows a contrarian outlook, it becomes really interesting. And this is why I'm basing my analysis on this poll. Number 2, as many of you already know, I'm an outsider here. I'm an immigrant, and I came to this country back when I was a teenager, and I had no idea what American politics are. I had no idea what Democrats are, what Republicans are. So I have no conditional bias one way or the other. I consider myself as an independent voter. And what I see this time around is a country that is so divided. I have never seen this country so divided as it is right now, to the point where the top issues for the both parties are completely polar opposite. I mean, you turn on the TV and you watch the liberal-leaning channels such as CNN and MSNBC, and then you flip to, say, Fox News, and it is a completely different world. The left talks about certain issues over and over again. The right talks about different issues entirely over and over again. And we see this illustrated in the polls. So in my opinion, looking at many polls, but concentrating on the Harvard-Harris poll, the top issues for Democrats, number 1, threats to democracy. And again, this issue is ambiguous. We don't know really what they mean, because do they mean threats to democracy such as freedom of speech, for example? The debate that's going on with Elon Musk and Twitter, what's going on with the future of freedom of speech? Or is it concentrated on voting issues, January 6th, and Trump? It could be either way. It could be interpreted either way, and of course, you know the answer exactly depending on which channel, which stream of the media you're exposed to. The terminology, threat to democracy, means different things to different voters. But this is the number 1 issue for the Democrats. Number 2, abortion. Number 3, climate issues. On the other hand, the top Republican issues, number 1, immigration. Number 2, the economy/inflation. Number 3, crime. And as you can see, this is the Harvard-Harris poll. We will look at Republicans, the top issues that they're focused on. Number 1, immigration. And then we see inflation, economy, taxes, all economic issues. So we're going to just include them in one specific issue. We call it economy/inflation. Then you have guns and crimes, and in recent polls, crime took the lead here. But guns, crimes, they can be looped in one issue here. So we're just going to stick to crime at number 3. When it comes to the Democrats, number 1 issue, January 6th. Number 2, women's rights. Number 3, the environment/climate change. And why are both parties running on these 3 issues exactly? When it comes to the Democrats, these happen to be the issues where voters say that the Democrats outperform Republicans in. For example, the question is, how will each of the following issues affect your vote in the midterms for Congress? When it comes to abortion, 41% say more likely to vote Democratic. When it comes to climate change, 40% say they're more likely to vote Democratic versus, let's say, 35% say they're more likely to vote Republican. So the Democrats have the edge here. And lastly, the threat to democracy from MAGA Republicans. This is the weakest issue for the Democrats. Only 38% say they're more likely to vote Democratic versus 36% who say they're more likely to vote Republican. Still, the Democrats have the lead here. When it comes to Republican issues, 48% say they're more likely to vote Republican if the issue is inflation. When it comes to crime, 47% of voters say they're more likely to vote Republican if that is the issue. When it comes to immigration, again, the Republicans outperform with 46% versus 35% who say more likely to vote Democratic. So no wonder why the parties are choosing these issues as their top 3. They're running on the issues where voters say the party tends to outperform in these issues. But here's the problem. In determining which party is going to win, we need to find out what voters say regarding the ranking of these issues when it comes to the importance. When we do that, here it is. When the poll asks, what would you say the most important issues facing the country today? The number 1 issue is inflation with 37%, and then economy and jobs, 29%, at number 3, immigration at 23%, and at number 4, crime and drugs at around 18%, and then comes women's rights at 17%, and then the environment/climate change way down there at 14%, and January 6th way down there at 7%. So you can see right off the gate, the top issues that voters tend to care about happen to be the top issues Republicans are running on. The issues that Democrats are running on, they're important, but they come way below the issues that Republicans are running based on. So right off the gate, the Republicans have the advantage here. Furthermore, when it comes to the question, how important each of the following issues in your vote in the midterms for Congress, and the rankings here, very important, somewhat important, or unimportant. When it comes to inflation, 74% of voters say the issue is very important. When it comes to crime, 68% say very important. When it comes to immigration, 59% say very important. When it comes to the Democratic issues, abortion, 55% say very important. And then comes climate change at 47%. And then the top issue for Democrats, yet the weakest link, I don't know why they're running based on that, but the threat to democracy, 41% say very important. Now, when voters are asked, how will each of the following issues affect your vote in the midterms for Congress? More likely to vote Republican, more likely to vote Democratic, or no effect at all? When it comes to inflation, 48% say more likely to vote Republican versus 36% who say more likely to vote Democratic. Similar story with crime, 47% to 35%. Immigration, the Republicans still outperforming with 46 to 35. When it comes to abortion, the Democrats take the lead with 41 to 38. And when it comes to climate change, the Democrats take the lead again with 40% versus 35% who say more likely to vote Republican. And lastly, when it comes to the threat to democracy, look at this. 38% say more likely to vote Democratic, but 36%, really close, say they're more likely to vote Republican. So let's talk about the issues one by one. Let's talk about inflation and the economy, what the polls say. The question is, how strong do you think the U.S. economy is today? About 65% back in October said the economy is weak versus 35% who say strong. And rumor has it, the 35% are due for an eye exam. Anyhow, when the question says, would you say that your personal financial situation is improving or getting worse? Look at this, getting worse at 57%. The majority say that their financials are getting worse. Doesn't matter what they are, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, the majority of voters say that their financials are getting worse. Now, when the question is, do you think the U.S. is in a recession now, will be in a recession next year, or most likely will avoid a recession, ? Again, the majority, 46%, say the U.S. is in a recession now. 38% say the economy will be in a recession next year. Only 16% say we'll avoid a recession, aka the soft landing. Likewise, when voters are asked, do you think that gas prices are rising or falling? 69% say prices are rising. Only 16% say they're falling. And when voters are asked, do you think the Fed will cause a recession or will it enable a soft landing as it works to rein in inflation? The vast majority, 74%, say that the Fed will cause a recession, not enable a soft landing. When voters are asked, how confident are you in Biden administration's ability to keep inflation at bay? Only 16% say very confident. The majority, 35%, say not confident at all. When the same voters are asked, how confident are you in the Federal Reserve's ability to keep inflation at bay? Only 13% say very confident versus 26% who say not at all confident, and the majority, 32%, who say not confident. And this is really important because the Biden administration has been dismissing inflation as all Putin price hikes, price gouging by the oil companies, etc., etc. Let's see what the voters think. Do you think President Biden's policies are responsible for most of the increase in gas prices, or are his policies not responsible? The vast majority, once again, 62%, say responsible versus 38% who say not responsible. And the bottom line is here. Do you mostly blame the Biden administration for inflation, or was it caused mostly by factors beyond their control? 55% say the Biden administration, 45% say factors beyond their control. But what's really important is independence. Independent voters, 52%, the majority, say it's the Biden administration's fault. When voters are asked, do you think inflation is increasing or coming down? The vast majority, 73%, say increasing, not coming down. And of course, when we look at President Biden's approvals, they're not pretty good at all. 40% of the nation say strongly disapprove of Biden. So when it comes to the issue of inflation and the economy, the Republicans outperform big time. And if that is the issue in the ballot, the Republicans will win. When it comes to immigration, another issue that the Republicans outperform at, we need to look at where independents stand. And this time around, we're going to use the Reuters poll instead. And the question is, to what extent, if any, do you believe the following are true? The U.S. is experiencing an invasion at the southern border. When it comes to independents, 46% say yes, we have an invasion in the southern border. All in all, 54% of voters agree with the statement. So again, if the issue is immigration on the ballot, the Republicans are going to win big. What about crime and drugs? The question is, do you think crime is rising, dropping, or staying the same? The vast majority, 66%, say rising. When it comes to independents, 60% say crime is rising. And here's the most stunning finding, even among Democrats, the vast majority, 55%, say crime is rising. And then the follow-up, do you think that the increase in crime is the fault of woke politicians with or other factors? The majority once again blame woke politicians, even the Democrats. Wow, 52%. So again, if this is the issue in the ballot, if this is what voters are voting based upon, the Republicans are going to win big. Now, when it comes to women's rights, an issue that the Democrats are placing at the top 3 in their platform, let's see what voters think. The question is, do you support or oppose the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which allows each state to decide its own standards for abortion instead of a set of rights? 50-50, divided country here. 50 support, 50 oppose. But here's the most important part. Does the decision make you more likely to vote in the midterms for a Democrat, for a Republican, or no effect at all? 40% say they're more likely to vote for a Democrat than a Republican, 37%. Most importantly, when it comes to independents, 29% say they're more likely to vote for Democrat, but also 29% say they're more likely to vote for a Republican. So when it comes to the women's rights / abortion, the Democrats have the lead, but it's not a clean-cut lead, as you've seen with the issue of immigration, economy / inflation, or crime. When it comes to these issues, the Republicans have the overwhelming lead. On the other hand, when it comes to the Democrats, on one of their top issues, they have a slim lead, not an overwhelming lead. When it comes to the issue of the environment / climate change, again, one of the top issues the Democrats are running based upon. The question is, do you think climate change is an immediate threat to your life, a long-term threat, or not really a threat at all? The majority say, 58% say long-term threat / not really a threat. It would have been nicer if they broke these in two, not lump them together. But the bottom line is only 42% say it is an immediate threat. Furthermore, the follow-up question is, does the Biden administration's energy and climate policies make you more likely to vote in the midterms for a Democrat, a Republican, or no effect at all? When it comes to independents, look at this. 33% say they're more likely to vote for a Republican versus 22% who say they're more likely to vote for a Democrat. This is bad for the Dems. I mean, if this is one of your top issues, you should have the overwhelming lead. This is not the case. Similar story. When it comes to January 6th, which to begin with is ranked way down there, when voters are asked, do you think the 2016 election of Donald Trump was legitimate or illegitimate? 70% say legitimate, 30% say illegitimate. And then, do you think that the 2020 election of Joe Biden was legitimate or illegitimate? Look at this. 62% say legitimate, 38% say illegitimate. And the most troubling finding is when we look at independent voters, 42% say illegitimate. That is stunning. Why do they think this? Why do 42% of independent voters believe that the 2020 elections was illegitimate? That's stunning. So again, every issue that the Democrats are running on, they have a slim lead. Unlike the issues that the Republicans are running on, they have a vast majority lead. And this leads us to the most important and fun part, which is the predictions for each race. This is what you've been waiting for. And let's set the stage here. When it comes to the House, we know without a doubt it's going to flip GOP. The question is, how big is the margin? And for now, it appears that it's going to be a very wide margin. The challenge was the Senate, which the Democrats had the lead all the way till October. And then that lead went kaputs. And the GOP took the lead big time. These are the betting odds, of course. 73% chance the GOP will win the Senate. 90% chance the GOP will win the House. So there is no point at all for us to do the House. That's a done deal. It's in the bag. The Republicans are taking the majority. The issue becomes the Senate. And again, to set the stage, you will notice from different polls, for example, the state of Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and many more. You see, for example, the Republican governor or candidate for governor leading big, yet the Republican candidate for the Senate is losing big, and vice versa. You could see the Senate candidate for one party leading, yet the candidate for governor is underperforming big. So why do we see this contrast? The answer is a lot of voters, like myself, independents, we don't have a party loyalty. We look at the issues, and if it makes sense to vote for governor one way and then vote another way for the Senate, if that makes sense, we'll do so. And you can see in New Hampshire, for example, 25% of voters say they're going to vote for the Republican candidate for governor, Sununu, but they're also going to vote for the Democratic senator, Maggie Hassan. Similar story in Kansas, but perhaps the most important states, or the most important state, is Georgia, where 15% of voters say they're going to vote for the Republican governor, Kemp, but they're going to vote for the Democratic senator, Warnock. In a similar story here in Wisconsin, 8% of voters say they're going to vote for the Democratic governor, but they're also going to vote for the Republican senator. So this is an important phenomenon that you got to keep in mind because it's going to come handy when we talk about Georgia specific. Now, here's the map for the Senate races. The red states in the back for the Republicans, the blue states in the back for the Democrats. The states in gray, no races at all. And then the states in, beige, have the most important races for the Senate. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to share my consensus outlook first, which is, hey, these races are in the bag. We don't need to talk about them at all. And race number 1 is Colorado. This is the race between Bennett versus O'Dea. When we look at the polls, Bennett is leading big. The likelihood is Colorado will be blue. So we're not going to waste any time talking about it. Colorado goes blue. What else? How about New Hampshire? We have Hassan versus Bulldog, whatever his name is. The polls show that Hassan leads. It's a tight race, but she still leads. And I say in the consensus outlook she wins because the poll that I just shared with you a few minutes ago, where a lot of voters say they're going to vote for the Republican governor, but they're going to vote for the Democratic senator. And therefore, let's do New Hampshire as blue. We're done with that. And next, in the secure category, how about Washington? We have the sitting senator, Murray, versus the challenger, Smiley. Now, as you can see, Murray has a comfortable lead, but Smiley is closing in. Can she do it by tomorrow? My answer is, in the consensus outlook, no. So we're going to write Washington as blue. Next, we have Arizona. We have the sitting senator, Mark Kelly, versus the challenger, Blake Masters. Now, this is a tight race, and it got a lot tighter in recent days, but my hunch is, in the consensus outlook, Kelly is tough to beat. So we're going to do Arizona as blue. That goes to Kelly. Next, we have the secure categories for the GOP, and we start with Wisconsin. And here we have the sitting senator, Johnson, versus the challenger, Mandela Barnes. Now, the polls suggest that Johnson is going to win comfortably. Yes, the race is tied, but this is a sitting senator with a lot of years of experience, a lot of loyalty by voters. It's hard to see that he's going to lose in this fashion. So we're going to do Wisconsin as red. What else? In the secure category, we also have Florida. And in this race, we have the sitting senator, Marco Rubio, versus Val Demings, the Democrat. Now, Rubio has a comfortable lead here, and he's tough to beat. So we're going to say Florida goes red. And for now, the race stands at Republicans 48, Democrats 48. We also have the race in Ohio, this time around the sitting Senator Tim Ryan, the Democrat, versus the Republican challenger J.D. Vance. And I say, when we look at the polls, Vance opened a massive lead here. So Ohio goes red. The demographics are changing in Ohio. The young folks are leaving. It's becoming an older state, more conservative, more Republican. And therefore, I say, without a doubt, Vance will win. So we got Ohio red. Now the Republicans take the lead 49 to 48. And it all comes to the three most important states, the most challenging states, Nevada, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. Let's start with the easy one, Nevada. And in this case, we have the sitting senator, the Democrat, Catherine Cortez Masto, who I dubbed as the dumbest member of the Senate before, versus the Republican challenger, Laxalt. Now, this remains a tight race, but we have a massive gap here that opened as of late. The Republican took the lead, big time, up about 3% average. And look, I lived in Nevada before. I worked in the casinos, was a truck driver before. I know Nevada politics. I know the demographic changes that's going on. A lot of Republican Californians moved from California to Nevada to avoid taxes. They're likely to vote Republican. Nevada is likely to tilt Republican from this point on due to the demographic changes alone. So in this race, I'm giving the lead to the GOP. They get Nevada. And now look at this. The Republicans at 50. Democrats at 48. Really tight race here. Next, let's do Georgia. What's going on here? We got the sitting senator, Raphael Warnock, the Democrat, versus the challenger, the Republican, Herschel Walker. Now, this is a tight and a nasty race. But as of late, Walker took the lead. It's a slim lead. It's a really tight race. And the catch with Georgia is there is no winner unless they get over 50% of the vote. So the consensus for now is it's going to be a runoff. Nobody's going to win, or we're going to have to do round number 2 in December. But that's boring, isn't it? So I'm going to say the Democrat, Warnock, is going to win. And a reminder, this is the consensus outlook. We'll talk about the red wave, the red tsunami in a minute before you get mad at me. But why do I say that Walker might lose? And he happens to be the weakest candidate for the GOP right now. I say that because Walker ran on the Democrats' strong issue of abortion. This is an issue that Democrats tend to outperform. Now, in recent weeks, Walker changed his tone, and he's talking more about inflation, about crime, about the economy, about energy policies, and in recent weeks, no surprise, Walker took the lead. But again, a lot of early voting already took place, and he kind of branded himself as running on the abortion issue alone, and this could hurt him tomorrow. Now let's talk about Pennsylvania, because now we got the Republicans at 50, Democrats at 49. Whoever wins Pennsylvania will end up leading the Senate. In this race, we have the Democrats, John Fetterman, and then the Republican, Dr. Oz. Isn't it interesting that we have a TV doctor versus a heart attack patient? I mean, American politics right now is a dark comedy, but it is a tight race. It is the tightest race in the country. And Oz, in the beginning, ran on the abortion issue. He made the classic mistake of running on an issue that Democrats tend to outperform. And he was way down in the polls, lagging Fetterman. But then, in recent months, he started talking about the energy policy, the economy, inflation, crime, and he started to gain momentum. And of course, we all know the disastrous debate between the two men, but most importantly, John Fetterman, of course. A lot of folks thought that he is maybe not ready after the stroke. He could not answer questions clearly. He could not form a coherent sentence. And of course, that worked in Oz's advantage.
I must correct the record.
Just a second, Mr. Oz. I do want to clarify something. You're saying tonight that you support fracking, that you've always supported fracking. But there is that 2018 interview that you said, quote, I don't support fracking at all. So how do you square the two?
I do support fracking, and I support fracking, and I stand, and I do support fracking.
So I say in the consensus outlook, Oz wins Pennsylvania, and the Republicans take the lead 51 to 49. Now, your question is, could Oprah tilt the race because Oprah came out and snubbed Dr. Oz. She endorsed Fetterman. I say nobody cares about Oprah right now. It's all about the independent voters. And they saw the debate. A lot of them are going to feel that Fetterman is not ready. And yes, Dr. Oz might be a scumbag, but at least he can form coherent sentences. With Fetterman, at least for now, forget about it. Now, what happens in the red wave scenario? Here's what's going to happen. Number one, Walker is going to win Georgia. So that's going to go red. And then Arizona, Masters is going to defeat Kelly, and Arizona goes red. And the final result would be Republicans 53, Democrats 47. Now, what if we have a red tsunami? What happens then? Then we could see New Hampshire going red. We can see Washington going red. And that gives the Republicans the lead at 55 versus 45. Now, what if the Democrats outperform for whatever reason? Let's say Obama's involvement as of late. Is that making a difference or not? Maybe it is, and it is exciting voters. Maybe the attack on Pelosi is making a difference. Maybe Billie Eilish telling people to vote Democratic is making a difference. I don't know. What would that look like? Here it is, 50-50. The Democrats keep Arizona, they win Georgia, and they win Pennsylvania. And the race becomes 50-50, split even with the Vice President Kamala Harris deciding the last vote. Now, why do I think that the GOP will win? 3 reasons. Number 1, suburban women. Number 2, the disconnect with voters. Number 3, the stick it to the Democrats mentality. Now remember, the Democrats are running on abortion because they think that they're going to win suburban women. But in recent polls, we found out that suburban women are actually shifting away from Democrats in favor of Republicans. And if we dig down, the reason is a lot of these women say, yes, abortion is important. But you know what's more important right now is inflation, the economy, the cost of child care, etc., etc. And of course, the gaslighting continues. For example, Sunny Hostin said suburban women backing the GOP like roaches voting for Raid. This is going to alienate suburban women even more, perhaps pushing them to adopt the stick it to the Democrats mentality, which we're going to talk about in a second. But before we do that, what do I mean with the disconnect with voters? As you've seen so far in this presentation, the top issues the Democrats are running on, they're not really in the top priorities for most voters. Most voters say the economy is number 1, crime number 2, and then whatever you want. But inflation and crime are really important. As the saying goes, it's the economy, stupid. In the Harvard-Harris poll, when the question is, does inflation make you more likely to vote in the midterms for a Democrat, a Republican, or no effect at all? When it comes to independents, 35% say voting for a Republican, 21% say voting for a Democrat. So inflation is the number 1 issue in the top of voters' minds, and the Republicans tend to outperform when it comes to inflation. Food prices are surging out of control, and there is no stop in sight here. The companies are going to continue to jack up prices higher and higher and higher. And Americans have no other choice but to continue to pay. Look at electricity cost, for example. This is insane. Look at this chart. Sky high, to the moon. You think voters are going to care about threat to democracy, abortion, climate when their utility bills are surging high? I don't think so. Power, gas, now making up a larger share of households' budget after years of decline. Now folks are paying more in utility bills, and this is really important for them. But perhaps the most important leading indicator is this, and this is from Politico. The share of registered voters who say that they believe the economy will be worse in the next year. Look at this. Republicans went down from 72 to 71. This is again an indicator of conviction, of confidence that they're going to win. And in their belief, a Republican win will make the economic picture look a lot better than before. On the other hand, when we look at all voters, be it independents and Democrats, the percentage of voters who believe that the economy will be worse next year is actually moving higher. For Democrats, from 23% last year to 33% this year. For independents, up from 47% last year to 53% this year. And this tells you, when voters are dissatisfied with the economy, they're likely to vote the other way. And here we're seeing dissatisfaction from Democrats, independents, and the majority of voters. Yet the Republicans, believing that they're going to win, they actually believe that the economy will be a little better next year. So this is what voters care about, and there is a massive disconnect from the Democratic Party with voters. And lastly, the stick it to the Democrats mentality. And this stems from the dissatisfaction of voters with the economy. So a lot of folks would say, you know what, I don't care who the Republican candidate is, but I know we should get rid of the Democrats, so I'm going to vote Republican just to stick it to the Democrats. Not because I believe in Republicans or the messaging or whatever. I'm just voting to stick it to the party that is in charge right now. And you can see this thinking being spread all over the place. For example, Elon Musk tweeted today, to independent-minded voters. Shared power corrupts the worst excess of both parties. Therefore, I recommend voting for a Republican Congress, given that the presidency is Democratic. And again, a lot of folks are dissatisfied with Democratic policies, be it the jab policy before during the pandemic, be it the inflation policy, be it the gaslighting, be it denying inflation, be it the war in Ukraine and all the money that we spent so far and the risks that this war entails. There is a lot of dissatisfaction here, and I think a lot of folks are going to vote Republican just to stick it to the Democrats, and this will make the difference whether we're going to have my consensus outlook or the red wave or even the red tsunami. But we know at the end of the day, the most likely outlook is Republicans will take charge. So with that understanding out of the way, what are the impacts on the economy and the market? We know the stock market loves a divided government. And in the case of a Republican Congress and a Democratic president, the returns are about 13% for the year. We'll see what happens. But again, elections are historically good for the stock market, regardless of the outcome. And it is the cherry on top if the market gets what it's looking for, the outcome the market is looking for. And for now, what is the market looking for? It's looking for a Republican challenge to the Democratic lead, which could push inflation down. And the result is an easier monetary policy, meaning the Fed taking it easy, interest rate hikes, because inflation is going down, because the fiscal spending is drying up, and this is what the market is looking for. But mind you, not every year of midterms was a good one. We have seen years such as 74, where the market went down by about 12% in a month after the midterm elections. Likewise, 94, down about 4.3% a month after the elections, and most recently, the market was down about 4.4% in the aftermath of the elections in 2018. But here's the take, folks. Options pricing indicates that the S&P 500 would rise as much as 0.7% on a Republican win and fall as much as 3.3% if the Democrats somehow hold on to Congress. To be sure, the results may not immediately be clear, especially if candidates refuse to concede or incite challenges to the results. And the risk of violence or protest could disrupt sentiment after the vote. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Over the long term, however, equity bulls may take comfort in the fact that U.S. stocks are in the most bullish time in the 16-quarter U.S. presidential cycle. The fourth quarter of midterm years and the following two quarters historically have been the strongest, delivering average gains of 6.6%, 7.4%, and 4.8% respectively for the S&P 500 since 1950. But before you get excited, here it is. This year's outlook, however, is complicated by the specter of the Fed's rate hikes. Last week, Powell dashed any expectations for a shift in the central bank's plans, saying it has some ways to go, quote-unquote, with lifting rates, and that its key policy rate may peak higher than expected. Liz Young from SoFi says midterm seasonality cannot hold up this time around because the market still has not come to grips with the fact that rates will need to go higher for even longer. And now here's what I say about the impact of a GOP win on the market. And we're going to look at this from the aspect of energy policy, defense policy, China policy, and the spending policy. We start with the energy policy, and I say Republicans will likely advocate to open the spigots, quote-unquote, to ease energy inflation, which will initially impact the energy sector negatively because prices go down. Stocks will also go down. But as the market realizes that Biden will veto these efforts, energy will recover. And I'm talking about oil here. The picture is a lot better when it comes to natural gas, because the impact on natural gas will be positive, especially with a Republican win in Pennsylvania. And you might have seen the ads with Dr. Oz with the fake EQT hat, looking around, pretending that he understands energy. But it doesn't matter. If Dr. Oz wins, as a senator, he cannot really change the energy policy in Pennsylvania. He can change the federal policy, but the message will be clear. Pennsylvania voters want more fracking. Pennsylvania voters voted to unlock the insane wealth that they're sitting on, the ocean of natural gas they're sitting on. And that sentiment alone will be good for natural gas producers in the Marcellus Shale, names such as EOG Resources, Range Resources, EQT, Coterra, even Cabot. But maybe the impact will be initially negative for names such as Chevron, Exxon, if the market reads it as, oh, Republicans will increase the supply and therefore prices will go down. We will see these stocks going down initially, and that would be an opportunity to buy. so long as the inflationary pressures remain intact. Now, when it comes to the defense policy, I say initially the market will view a Republican win as bad for defense spending to support Ukraine, and defense stocks will fade. However, it will not take a long time for the market to figure out that Republicans will ramp up defense spending even more than the Democrats, and the aggregate demand will kick in and it will lift the defense sector higher again. And the names we're looking at are General Dynamics, Raytheon, Lockheed, Northrop, the classics. Now, of course, the majority of voters, at least for now, they support more weapons to Ukraine. This support will fade as the economy heads into a recession here, but for now, the support remains intact. Likewise, when the question is, should the United States government provide more weapons to help Ukraine fight off the Russian invasion? Or should it avoid doing so for fear of escalating the conflict with Russia? The majority, 58%, say provide more weapons. And in another question, should the United States government provide advanced missile systems to Ukraine to help it protect civilian centers from Russian rockets or avoid doing so? The vast majority, 59%, say provide the advanced missile systems. So for now, even if initially the Republicans say we're going to cut funding to Ukraine, they might feel a pushback from voters, not just the Democratic voters, but also Republican voters. So the defense spending all in all will go higher. And even if the support fades away, because the economic situation is worsening here, we're still going to sell weapons to European allies. And therefore, I say if these defense stocks react negatively initially, they're going to be bought again. Then what about the impact on China policy? I say Republicans are more hawkish and confrontational against China than Democrats. It is likely that we will see chip sales restrictions to China getting tighter, and the likelihood of Chinese retaliation will increase. And the stocks that will be impacted the most are stocks with massive ties to the Chinese economy, such as Qorvo, Texas Instruments, AMD, NVIDIA, and most importantly, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor, if there is an invasion. We also have Tesla, Starbucks, Apple, Nike, and Alibaba. All of these stocks will be impacted negatively because the Republicans will be even more hawkish than the Democrats against China. When it comes to the spending policy, I say Republicans more likely to end spending policies that enabled inflationary consumer spending. While this is good overall to reduce inflation, the impact of declining consumer spending will translate into declining revenue for many companies. And here we're talking about leisure, hospitality, travel, consumer goods, anything that is related to consumer spending power will take a hit. For example, Airbnb, Hilton, United Airlines, Carnival, Visa. They're not going to swipe those credit cards up and down anymore when the government stops stimulating the spending. PayPal could go down. Casino names such as MGM will go down. Live events, Live Nation, spending will go down. Procter & Gamble, consumer goods. If the government stops the spending, you're going to buy less from Procter & Gamble. Likewise, Costco. If your spending power is going to go down, no more stimmies, no more benefits, you're likely to buy items, smaller items, when you need them, spending a little at a time rather than buying in bulk. Who's going to buy iPhones? The spending in Amazon will go down. Spending in retail stores such as apparel, Lululemon, that might go down too. When the government takes away the stimulatory policies and say, hey, you can't live beyond your means, that might be good for inflation, but it could also be bad for the bottom lines for these companies. As they see revenues going down, yet they might not see their expenses going down at the same rate. Their expenses might remain high because we have energy inflation. The tailwinds for energy inflation remain really, really strong. And folks, this is just how I see things. This is my analysis. Let me know what you think in the comments. And better yet, let us know what your ranking of the issues you're voting on tomorrow. And folks, this is all I got for you for this video. But a reminder, the technical analysis video will be out later this evening. It's going to be a members-only video. For now, I hope that you found this video enjoyable, and if you did, be kind enough to press the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. Once again, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you again soon.
Sandcorp Industries. Sandcorp is deep into natural gas. I don't give a hoot about natural gas, but I have 67 deputy whips, and they all need cash to win races. Sandcorp helps me purchase loyalty, and in return, they expect mine. It's degrading, I know, but when the tit's that big, everybody gets in line.